one of the biggest misconceptions is that you have to be, technical to be in the cybersecurity industry. As I was transitioning from the service, I took advantage of the multiple resources that are available through nonprofit organizations. I'm actually an O2O alumni. I took the PHR certification training, and then I took advantage of other nonprofit organizations as well. One of them was a state-run organization by the name of Work for Warriors. And their sole purpose is to connect transitioning service members, veterans, Guard, as well as spouses, and employment opportunities within the states that they operate in. Me being here in California, I was planning to stay here, and they connected me through Fortinet. At that point, I was totally unaware about the IT, the cybersecurity industry. One of the things that we focus plenty on the military is the physical security. So I went to college, I got my undergrad, my grad degrees, focus on criminal justice. Little did I know about the opportunities that this industry presented itself until that time when somebody from the nonprofit, from Work for Warriors, connected me to Fortinet. And that's how I started my career in the cybersecurity, IT industry. Initially was through a business development role. That's one of the paths that many take. It's a sales path to get into the cybersecurity industry. So I was a mixture of business development, operations analyst, as well as leading the veterans program in the United States. And then one thing led to another. We were actually able to scale the program, we grew it globally, and now I sit as the lead for the global program.
Okay, definitely. Very interesting. That was a lot of a path to follow. And when you were talking about business development, I started thinking about myself. That's kind of where I am today. But I have a little bit. Let's go with Jeff, please. A little bit of your journey to where you are today. What got you into the cyber?
Sure thing. Well, so transitioning out of the Army, I was a cavalry scout. So, I definitely didn't have the technical expertise in the Army. I knew how to call for fire. I knew how to command a tank. Beyond that, it was like, what do I do? So, one of the things I thought was important was being able to use the skills that I had to figure out how to get into a company to then learn the things I wanted to do. And so for me, I actually started at Dell Computer right out of the Army, managing a technical support call center for servers and storage devices. I'd never managed a call center. I didn't know anything about the technology. I used to joke that they'd call me a non-technical manager. What I did know how to do was manage people. And so, a group of 30 people that needed leadership, I could figure out. And then I did everything possible to learn the technology on my own. So I actually ended up pursuing the R&D path in Dell because I have an engineering background and worked my way into that organization. And so, I took a non-traditional path to IT. All of the work that I had done mostly was R&D, and then I had an opportunity to go work for the state government in a deputy CIO role. And so, what I think is important along the way is doing everything possible to learn the technology. There's a lot of folks who will say, hey, what's your 5-year, 10-year plan? Be ready for opportunities, prepare yourself, learn as much as you can. And when people present you an opportunity, decide whether or not that's something you can excel at. And it may not be a direct path in cyber, but as you're picking up the skills, one of the things I think is really important to understand is cyber is a hot industry. It's a hot skill set. Everybody wants to start it. The challenge with it is there's a lot of people starting it. And so the market is flooded with people entering the market. And so what it's not flooded with is people who have all these additional skills that they can bring to bear in addition to the cyber skills. So I would definitely encourage you to focus on the things that differentiate you. What else are you good at? What can you continue to work on to build out that well-rounded portfolio? And in many cases, the opportunity in the organization may be based on that. And then once you have a position and can start to network and expand, really working towards that direction that you want. And I had a government security role, and then I had most of my IT jobs were service provider side. Providing direct IT services to customers. My first real IT job was as a CTO of an IT organization globally. So it was a non-traditional path into that function, but I definitely think that it was all based on seeing opportunity, knowing what I was good at, getting a foothold with what I was good at, and expanding into other things that interested me. And I think that never really branding yourself as one thing is helpful, because where the opportunity lands may be partially that and something else. And that's where you can add value.
Thanks, Jeff. I see. I was watching a lot of the panelists. You guys are all nodding your heads. Everybody in agreement to that. Let me jump to Chris real quick. A little bit of your journey, Chris, and where you are today.
Sure. So again, coming out of the Army, I did like a lot of Army officers do. I threw myself in any and every job that would interview me. I think one of the things that, going back to what Jeff was just saying, I had a lot of opportunities there, but I was having a hard time to pay homage to current political, or not political, buzzwords that you'll hear. I found nothing that sparked joy in most of what I was finding. I found an opportunity to go to Perot Systems. I was tired of being rained on, shot at, cold, hot, and all this. And someone explained to me that computers had to operate in very carefully controlled environments, and that sounded great. So this program I got in was about a year and a half of, to put it bluntly, pure hell. It was, you know, they move you from job to job to job before you ever get good at any of them, to include nights in data centers and all this. And then it really kind of started teaching me, again, I'm going to quote Jeff there, you know, if I'm going to tell you guys anything, it's going to be aggression. You've got to be aggressive about your career. You've got to be aggressive about where you want to go. That doesn't mean being a pain to everyone, but that means decide who you want to be when you grow up and go after that thing. Do not wait for people to hand it to you, because as we said, yeah, there's a whole lot of people who are in your spots right now where they're trying to get good at cyber. They're trying to bust in, and you need to find a way to differentiate yourself. And sometimes that differentiation is nothing more than, I want it more than the rest of them do. Case in point, I was sitting with my wife. I'm going to date myself when I say this. And there was this new company called Amazon.com that was coming online. And we were watching Christmas commercials. And I remember looking at my wife and saying, you know, they're spending all this money on the internet. They're going to need cops. So that's what I'm going to go do. And because, again, it married to my history. It was what I had been doing, defense and, you know, light artillery, be mobile, you know, all this kind of stuff. This felt like something I could relate to. So I went to the security team and told them I wanted a job, and they told me they don't have one. And so I just kept pestering them literally every day until finally, just out of sheer interest to get me to leave them alone and quit eating up their lunch hour, telling them what a wonderful person I was, they gave me a job. And the rest has been kind of history. It was moving from there into another role where they made me a firewall admin, and then the other firewall admins quit, and I was the last one standing. And I said, sure, I'll take it all on, no problem. And the next thing I know, I'm running the team globally. And then, you know, going to Deloitte, doing that there, going to the Federal Reserve, getting put in charge of a team in the, you know, within the Federal Reserve System that crossed 17 different departments of the government. All of this was all because when you see an opportunity, you take it. You step into it, and you say, well, yeah, I want to be helpful. I want to be the one who can help make a difference. I want to be the one who does these things. Within the consulting side, it was the same thing. I got tired of being a perpetual PCI victim in a retail operation in a world where it was all changing every 5 minutes. And I went to work for a service provider who had been handing me a lot of business over the years. And, you know, started off as a consultant, found an opportunity because we had work that we weren't doing well. So I designed a better way to do it at night, got promoted to principal consultant on that. Then they made me a managing principal because I was teaching others how to do it. Took over a practice, blah, 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 VP all the way up, running, you know, lines of businesses for millions and millions of dollars every day. But again, it all, at the end of the day, comes back to controlled aggression. And that is, look for what you want, find a way. Talk to the people, listen to the people, read the people, understand what it is, who does the things you want to do, understand how they speak, understand what drives them, draw correlations between what you can do and what they do and how you can get there, and then fill in the blanks. No one's going to give you a job just because you're, you know, an extremely handsome looking man with an incredible beard. No, that's not going to happen. What they're going to give you the job for is because you stood up, held up your hand and said, I'll fix that. Yeah, no problem. And even if I fail, the worst you do is you fire me and you're no worse off than you were before. And, you know, you move through that way. So, you know, that's been my career all the way through, has just been seek out and find something. I took a job on as a chief revenue officer for a while, which has nothing to do with security. The only thing it had to do with it was we were a security company. And now all of a sudden I'm running sales and marketing and operations and delivery. And I'm real good at the delivery. The other stuff, I don't know. hey, great fun. Unfortunately, it went the way that a lot of startups go. But the fact of the matter is, I learned more in there by stepping completely out of my comfort zone than I ever would have otherwise. And that's what all of you need to be doing if you want to get in this space. There's a lot of jobs. There's a lot of people. There's an incredible amount of opportunity. So go find it, and just, it's not going to be handed to you for free, but there are resources that are incredible that are available for all of you to pick it up and learn with it. So to include, finding people like several of us on the panel here who are involved in active mentorship with other people like that, and give you information and introduce you to people and talk to you about the concepts and things like that. These are all highly available options.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, definitely. Persistence. Duke, let me go ahead and end with you on that, and then we'll go into a commercial real quick. Just a 5-10 minute break.
Sure. I think my journey started, on active duty. While I was stationed at Fort Hood, I was a combat engineer, but we had a very, very basic data network in the field, the secure data network. I think it was like 64 kilobits per second. And sorry about that. I think my phone keeps rotating. And I helped to develop a system to track minefields using that data network, and also to chat on it. So when I decided to transition out, I had the opportunity and a job offer from EDS to work at the National Guard Bureau headquarters here in Arlington, Virginia, and work on their nationwide distance learning network. And so I worked in the NOC, in operations. And I think that was foundational to my background, in that I learned networking really well. I learned operations, fixing things that break, reacting, and certainly, military experience was helpful for that. And then from there, I decided that if I'm going to be in networking, I want to work on the biggest network in the world. And so I applied and got a job at UUNet, which runs, and they currently run the backbone of the network as part of the Verizon network. And I did that for a couple of years. And then I changed careers because if you remember, MCI WorldCom owned UUNet, and it kind of blew up around 9/11. There was a lot of scandal at WorldCom with the fraud, and they went bankrupt. And so I found a job at Nextel, and it was a cellular data engineering job. So I was able to leverage the data experience that I had, but again, it was a completely different field and a completely different environment. But I was able to learn more about, networking and data, and was able to help engineer some cell phones at Nextel. And while I was there, a colleague of mine whom I had worked with at EDS on the network had contacted me, and she had just started up a security consulting, consulting practice at a defense contracting company. And she said, hey, I've got an opening. I'm looking for somebody to help me build a cybersecurity or information security consulting practice. Are you interested? And at that point, I was like, well, that's a career change, but let's check out what this information security thing is all about. Because at the time, it was the beginning of the of that branch of that industry. So I joined, and I helped put together proposals and learned a lot about the security and the defense of information systems. And I've also had to grow and develop a business unit, a security practice. That lasted for a while. I became the director of that practice. And then I kind of changed companies again and had the opportunity to go work at VeriSign in the IT audit group. And so that background and experience taught me a lot about the IT security controls and the compliance and audit side of information security. And then from VeriSign, another colleague of mine that I'd worked with at UUNet contacted me, who was working here at CFC. He said, hey, I've got a security architect position. It's brand new. We don't have any dedicated staff. Are you interested in coming over to help out? And I thought, well, this is a greenfield opportunity. I can help build a security program from the ground up, leverage what I've learned over the years. And so I joined the company, and I basically brought in a lot of the technologies, wrote a lot of the policies, and developed a program and the team here. And I think the rest is history, so to speak. And now, I'm leading the team for security and also for infrastructure and operations. And I think one of the other panelists had mentioned that the synergy and cooperation between security and infrastructure, if it's close, can be very, very beneficial. because then you can make sure that security is integrated in your infrastructure, and that operationally you're responding together. So that has been helpful. But I think that the takeaway from my journey was that sometimes you got to take a risk, and you have to be willing to change companies and be willing to change careers or change fields within a career and do things you may not have looked into. Another takeaway is that information security is a very broad area, a very broad discipline with multiple domains, right? And so, for example, the audit and compliance side is completely different than the security operations side, being in a SOC or responding to incidents. And that's different from being a consultant and being in professional services. So there is a lot of opportunity. And I would encourage, those of you who are looking to get into information security to explore all those different domains, because one area may be of interest to you, or one or two areas may be, you may apply, you can apply your background or your specific differentiators and background and experiences and skills to certain areas more so than others. Some domains are more technical than others. But then, not everyone wants to be an IT auditor, or not everyone wants to be a penetration tester, or not everyone, and some people may be more suited to being in a SOC and analyzing events and responding to them. So I think that was a takeaway for me. And then the third item that I wanted to share was take advantage of your network of contacts. In my own journey, 2 of my jobs were the result of a colleague that I'd worked with before who had an opportunity, and they contacted me knowing my background. And so events like this, organizations like this really do help you to grow that network, get to know other people in the industry. It may seem like, it's a large industry, but you do run into a lot of the same folks all the time. In fact, Rod Castillo from Kai's and I ran into each other at a Gartner conference. And we're like, hey, we're working in the same field, let's work together. So, and that was, really a very beneficial meeting as well. And I think that's what I'd like to share about my journey. I found that information security is very challenging, but at the same time, it's very dynamic. You're not going to do the same thing every day. And that's what I love about it. And no matter what organization you're in. So, and the skills are certainly transferable. Just because you work in financial services, you could probably transition and work in government contracting. You can transition and work in retail sales or in consulting as well. So I guess the challenge is breaking in. How do you get started? And I think others have shared that learn the technical skills, learn the technology, because I think that's foundational. If you can get it, find those opportunities, internships, or entry-level jobs, those are all great.
All right, thanks, Duke. Yeah, I can definitely relate. I mean, another thing on that, just for myself, is I'm some of you guys. I'll start dating myself. I'm 50 years old and I got into this field, so I don't know. I don't think there's really an age limit to it. I really don't. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Quentin. I went ahead and gave you the host, and I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stay here. I'll mute myself out. But I have another meeting I got to jump into at 2 o'clock. So if we do run over, then it won't affect this OWASP panel discussion. Quentin, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Rob. And thank you to all our panelists for sharing your journey with us. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and we're going to play a quick video from our sponsors.
Forced to curtail operations after a ransomware attack. At least 6 plants in the U.S. shut down.
I'll go ahead and leave this up, and we can all just take a quick 5-minute break, and we'll be back at 1:40. All right, welcome back, everybody. We'll just give everyone a minute to rejoin. All right, looks like we're all back. So what I wanted to do with the second half of this panel discussion was we had a couple of questions provided by the participants, and we tried to narrow it down to about 5 different questions. We would have liked to have had each of our panelists touch on the questions individually, but I fear we won't have time for that today. So I'd just like to pick each one of you and ask you a question and just have you answer it. I think we provided some of these questions beforehand, so hopefully it won't throw you off at all. So the first question I have, I'd like to ask to Brian Bobo. And the question provided by one of the participants was, I have a broad background in IT, but very general. Is there a good area to narrow my focus and specialize in?
Yeah, I think, well, I guess it all depends. I think if you want to be in security, one of the best answers to that was I hired a cyber hunter in one of my previous roles who was, we didn't have a lot of money, so we couldn't afford, you know, some really fancy, expensive guy. So we hired somebody who's young and eager and just wanted to learn. And he was asking one of the pen testers for one of the consulting companies we worked with. He said, well, what do I need to do to be really good at being in offensive security? And he said, well, he said, spend 10 years or, you know, however many years being a developer, and then spend however many years on the network side of things and however many years on the server side of things. And he basically explained this really long, broad background that would give him all the skills he needed to be really great at being offensive security. And so he kind of get the sad look on his face and sauntered off. But it was, you know, I think when it comes to security, it really doesn't matter what you pick. It will be, it'll all help you. And I think having a broad background is even better. So what I would say is if you want to go into security, so again, if you want a technical track or do you want to go more in the type of leadership roles that those of us on the panel have. And I think for me, having a broad background and then a very high level understanding of technology and the ability to know what right looks like. Because in security, there's no way you can know everything. It touches every technology, every aspect of the business, and it touches, when you think about social engineering, has nothing to do with technology really, other than if you're using email. But those kind of backgrounds are what helps you be really successful. So I would say focus on the people side of things. And no matter what you want to do, even if you want to be technical, being able to establish and build relationships and get to know people and influence people that don't report to you or you don't have any sort of formal relationship with is very important, especially in security, because you have to get so many people to help you in so many different ways. And so, and some of the background stuff too is, again, it's the soft, squishy stuff. When I first joined the Army, I went into counterintelligence and not knowing years later that I'd be involved in security, and the types of things I learned were exactly what social engineering is. And exactly what the spycraft uses to get people to do things that they wouldn't do otherwise. So, I think everything you have is in terms of your background is important. But then when it comes to focusing, again, at some point you just got to do what you love. And if you find that you love a certain aspect of it and you want to dig in technically, or if you want to be a leader, then being broad is good as a leader. So
thank you, Brian. That was a great response. And next, I would like to ask Chris Gray. Our next question from one of the participants was, what are some good resources to utilize so we can keep up with the current and future technological trends and get an idea about where the industry is heading?
Man, I wish I could answer that question well. The reason I say this, if you watch all the panelists, I'll laugh about this if they don't all shake their head. What security is right now is not what security was 5 years ago. When I first started this, security was all the networkers who just so happened to do firewalls and IDS and things like that. And then we grew into actually being security people. And now it's kind of transitioning back to where we got outsourced people, where networkers are doing so much of our stuff and we're maintaining specialty areas over here, but we're all, they're also telling security executives, but you better go get an MBA because you got to be able to sit in front of the board and make a, conversational based, discussion around these things. But with that being said, it's all the stuff. Yeah, I said it earlier. Watch videos, listen to blogs, listen to podcasts, read books, find all these things out, and they're great, and you will learn. There's no question. But when it comes to what is hot and heavy, what's evolving, where are things emerging, you cannot do better. It was a broken record, but you can't do better than having a network. Having others in the industry that you work with talking about what they're doing, listening to where they're focusing their time, how things are migrating and moving into the cloud, or how cyber digital transformation is changing the way they're doing everything, machine learning, data science, all these things, how they're driving all this forward. This is important stuff. You know, I keep up email conversations with 50 or 60 people on the regular, and then just kind of sit here and trend over on one side of my screen. What did 3 of them talk about? What did 5 of them talk about? You know, where did this go? So by all means, you can go do a Google search for what are the 10 best security blogs out there today, and you can read them, and they're great. And you can find, you know, any number of things. I recommend those when you got 10 minutes, you know, in your drive into work in the morning, to pop on a privacy podcast and listen to GDPR and how it's migrating and evolving as things are rolling. Listen to how CMMC is changing the way that the government's being able to do business with the independent industry. You know, do all these things. But again, if I was going to say, how do I stay on top of what's evolving and what's out there? I listen to my friends, and I listen to people, sadly, who say things that cause me to kind of raise my eyes and go, I don't have a clue what this guy's talking about. Let me go dig deeper and find out, because that literally, I mean, I make the joke, before COVID, people were in the cloud or they were getting ready to go to the cloud. And in the last 18 months, everyone's gone to the cloud, and half of them weren't prepared to do so. They didn't know where they were going to be, and they're struggling to find out. Well, that's a bit of an artificial emergency that drove that material. But with that being said, you can't talk to someone who, you know, Brian brought up IoT. If you would have told me that anyone was going to care about IoT 15 years ago, I would have laughed at you and said there's a bunch of dumb devices that sit in closets and do things. Yeah, well, they're also the dumb devices that keep gas moving up and down the East Coast and that shut down everything because someone panicked for half a second. It's all evolving, and the fun thing about it is there's a book called Warrior Politics by a gentleman named Kaplan that you summarized it at the end of the day. There's nothing new. Everything we're doing is recycling. It's just the next iteration of it. You look to history to see how people dealt with it. You evolve that to modern tactics. That's the same thing. As you're playing this game, look at it, listen to what people are saying they're doing, look historically on how that was chased, and then find a way to get yourself into that same skill set that's evolved to the modern day. It's probably a convoluted answer, but there you go.
No, that was a great answer. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your response. Next, I'd like to ask Duke Lai. The next question from one of our participants was, if you could give one piece of advice for anyone who was looking to start a career in cybersecurity, what would it be?
I mentioned it before about the complexity of the cybersecurity field and how it has multiple domains. So my one piece of advice is to explore. Explore, take the time to explore all those domains, knowing what your backgrounds are, what your strengths are, because while you're exploring, you're also going to learn. And as you learn, you're going to be able to leverage those learnings to get you that, the job or the opportunities. I think those are going to open up doors. And when you're exploring, you're also going to be able to build up your network of contacts. So explore more than just the technology, explore your contacts, explore, the world, the industry, the different companies that have openings. Because there are a lot of opportunities that, the more that you learn about cybersecurity or information security, I think the more of an advantage that you will have. I know that for my team, when I was looking for new team members, and I've hired mostly from internal inside the company, they don't necessarily come with the requisite 15 years of experience in cybersecurity or information security. What I look for is someone with the right attitude and the right aptitude. So if you have the right attitude and the right aptitude, I think that's going to open up doors for you. So my advice is to explore, because that's what's going to lead to other things.
Great response, Duke. Thank you for your answer. Next, I'd like to ask Jay Garcia. This question from our participants was, are there any pointers you could give to someone who's looking to join the field and become better at being a good communicator?
That's a great question, Quinn. Something that communication, right? There's different types of communication. One small tip here that I would offer is just to be present. For example, Ian Lowenthal, please send me a message. I would love to review your profile on LinkedIn and check out your experience, your resume, your certifications, your education, and your training. Why do I say that? Because he's the only one that I can see the face here on the screen. So again, right, communication, branding, employee branding, job seeker branding. I need to be able to go on LinkedIn and see what type of skills, what type of experience, what type of certification, what type of education Ian provides to any future employer. So that's for me something that I'm very big on, especially when 85 to 90% of the recruiters are utilizing the LinkedIn platform to verify candidates. So that's something that I would like to offer. I'm very huge on brand, communicating with employers, taking ownership, putting yourself in a box, being that the missing piece that the company is looking for. This is something that I always say. If I was to look at Ian's profile, is there enough evidence there to convict them of being whoever he's saying he is? Whether a network specialist, a SOC analyst, a CISO, whether it's a NAM, or somebody that does HR, or somebody that does project management. So again, right? Long answer, short, please. There's different types of communication. Social media, LinkedIn is very huge because there 730 million plus people get to see your resume at any given time.
A great answer, Jay. Really appreciate it. I think that answered the question perfectly. And we have one more question before we close out today, and that'll be for Jeff, please. And the question from one of our participants was, what led you to cybersecurity, and what made you choose this as a career?
Thanks for the question. So as I mentioned before, I kind of fell into this, but as I look back, the thing that was most intriguing and why I've stuck with this is, and kind of tie it back to Chris's comments as well. So I'm a big cloud computing person. That's been my profession for the last 12 years. That's my focus. I've transformed companies. That's where I'm most proud of the work that I've done. But by doing that, what you do is you introduce even more network complexity into the organization, and to some degree relying upon others for elements of your security. So as I've looked at the entire ecosystem of protecting end to end my enterprise, not having a deep and fundamental understanding of cybersecurity puts everything at risk. And I do think that if you're struggling with trying to figure out how to get into the industry, pick one aspect of it and get really good at it. Gaining an expertise doesn't mean it's a life sentence. It just means it's a foundation to build upon. You can always pivot and change later. But what really, I think, equipped me the most was a job I had at Dell where we were starting a new product line of business. And I was the R&D side, but we were going to enter the market for layer 2 Ethernet switches. The company had never sold anything like that before. There was a small group of us that had to go figure out how to design and work with manufacturing partners. So I bought every book I could find about layer 2 switching, about layer 3 routing, and became the company's expert on things that I didn't know before. And we had to develop and design these devices, brand them, and launch them in the market, and we had success with that. But fast forward that years later, the expertise I now have when I can challenge all of my cyber team and my network infrastructure team, because I know things down at the fundamental network level that shock them. And so continuing to build some technical acumen while you're developing, if you are interested in the management side of things or the project management side, having a technical foundation to fall back on, if you're going to be in a technical profession, I always believe is a wise thing to do. So if you can't figure out which certificate you want to go get or various training, become a very, very, very strong network protocol person. And through that expertise, I'm quite certain you'll have the connections you need with people to move into the cyber side.
Thank you, Jeff. That was a really good answer. Appreciate it. It looks like we're just about at our time here. So I just want to give a big thank you to each one of our panelists. Thank you for coming on and sharing a little bit of your story with us and giving some of our participants some really great advice.